how you usually say it, and welcome to Real Shame. It's a twice, sometimes more a week show where we review movies from our movie list of shame or movie blind spots. I'm Adam.
I'm Andy.
And earlier in the week, we talked about a movie that was a war movie, and it was Glory, and we're following it up with another war movie, and that movie is going to be?
A Midnight Clear.
Let's get into that.
Dies ist meine Kommandeur.
Also sag's ihm, es ist nicht viel Zeit, die Offensive kommt.
Yeah. Okay, Will, come over here. Okay, they do want to surrender. As soon as possible. Today. He's convinced that this German push is coming through here any time now. There's a kicker. It's a big kicker. See, the young ones are scared shitless. The Germans come through here, and it looks like they surrendered without a struggle. It's going to be taken out on their families. They say everything is going nuts back home, and they don't want their parents to get shot or put in camps because their sons were cowards.
Well, do they have a suggestion?
Yeah. They want us to take them in a fake skirmish.
What?
So, A Midnight Clear came out in 1992, adapted from William Wharton's novel. A handful of German soldiers who feel that World War II is nearing an end and their side is going to lose, wish to surrender to some American soldiers who are stationed deep in the Ardennes forest in a midnight clear, just in time for Christmas. We got a midnight clear. It was directed by a man named Keith Gordon. Keith Gordon actually got his start as an actor. He is in movies like Jaws 2, Dressed to Kill. He's Arnie in Christine. He's the guy that has Christine. He's the evil kid. He turns evil, I guess, once he gets Christine and starts running people over.
Oh, Christine's the car.
Yeah, he's Rodney Dangerfield's son in Back to School. He started directing movies in 1988 with the movie The Chocolate War. I believe this was his second movie, again, from 1992. He wrote the screenplay, but again, adapted it from the novel by William Wharton. And although it takes place in the Ardennes Forest, which is in Europe, it was filmed in Utah.
I read it was filmed in like the coldest winter like on record in Utah and stuff like that. Yeah.
It looked pretty cold in the movie.
It looked very cold.
So this is a movie that you have never seen.
Nope.
I actually have never seen this movie either.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was new for me.
So
but I wanted to pick another war movie to go along with Glory, and also this one has a Christmassy kind of theme. Not theme, but it takes place at Christmas.
Yeah.
Or around the Christmas time.
So have you heard of this movie before, or was it just something you found like Googling and stuff like that?
I heard of it. I think I remember when it came out back in 92, but I didn't see it then, and I just forgot about it. And I think it came out on Blu-ray in the last few years.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, yeah, that movie. And I got a copy, and we watched it.
We did watch it. And watch it we did.
Watch it we did. So it's your go. You get to tell me, what did you think about A Midnight Clear?
I think there's one really outstanding part of the movie. And other than that, the whole movie is just kind of a letdown for me. The hardest part with the movie is just the whole tone feels off. And I think they're going for like a psychological kind of thriller aspect to it, but it doesn't really lean into it. So it just feels like uneasy, and honestly just feels like unconfident, like not confident, unsure of itself. It just felt that way. So until the part happens, and it's like basically the penultimate part, basically the climax of the movie, everything else just kind of like, and I'm just like not into it. I'm like, why are we here? What's the motivation? Like, what am I doing watching this stuff? Like, it just doesn't feel good to me until that moment. So I'm not a big into it. Words are hard. What about you? What do you think?
Well,
about this?
so they get sent. So this young kind of troop of guys. You've got Ethan Hawke, Peter Berg, Ari Gross, Gary Sinise, Frank Whaley, Kevin Dillon. They all get sent up to this like chateau kind of place that's deep in the forest because they have heard that there's some German activity going around there. So their mission is to, and they're all intelligent guys. They're the intelligence.
The intelligence squad.
Something. They all get sent up to this kind of chateau place, and it's huge. This huge mansion place that's abandoned. And they're supposed to be scouting for any German activity in the area. And when they get there, well, one of the things that they see on their way up there is they see two frozen soldiers that have been put together, an American soldier and a German
And
soldier.
what is the point of that?
Well, they say it later on in the movie. They felt like the Germans were trying to tell them something like, we want to get together. We want to communicate with you. It's weird when you first see it because you're like, why are they dancing? Like, what are they doing?
Yeah,
it's a weird thing to do. I feel like it's kind of disrespectful to do to two corpses, but that's why they guessed that they were doing it.
And the question is like, did they die that way? Like, that's what I was thinking. I was like, how do people...
I don't think they died that way. I think they put them together.
Yeah.
They were trying to send a message.
Yeah. No.
Well, anyway.
Message not received, at least
not received by you, but received by me. But yeah, no, so that's what the American soldiers are there to do. And they do start to see some German activity.
Yep.
But the German activity is decidedly not... what's the word?
It's not what it's unusual, right? It's not what you would expect in a two sides fighting a war.
It's not hostile. That's the word I was looking for.
It's not hostile. It's playful almost.
Yeah, and it turns out that, again, as I mentioned in kind of the synopsis, the German soldiers are like, you know what? We feel like we're on the losing end of this. If we don't surrender to you, we're going to get sent to Russia and have to fight over there. We don't want to die. We want to go home to our families. It's Christmas time. Just let us surrender to you. And so they kind of work it out with the Americans to surrender. I like this movie, I think, a lot more than you did. I do have some problems with it. I don't like... There's a flashback scene that occurs in the film that Ethan Hawke, where they meet a girl that they all spend some time with. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I thought that scene was just... I mean, again, it didn't offend me or anything like that. I just didn't feel like it was needed in the movie. It didn't add anything to the movie for me. And then I feel like the last 20 minutes or whatever, it just went on... It went on much further than it should have. I felt like it should have ended after what happens to them with the German soldiers, which we can get into, but I don't want to spoil it just yet. At that point, and then John C. McGinley, who's their commander, comes back. I feel like it could have ended there.
Yeah, it should have ended there.
It should have ended there.
There's like a whole prologue after that.
They just keep going, and I was like, this is unnecessary, and I felt like that kind of took something away from the movie for me. But I think I liked it overall. I found the story interesting, and I thought it was pretty compelling. Actually, I thought it was a cool little story. If you just have that section of them at the chateau, basically, and you don't have this flashback crap, and you don't have this stuff that the last 20 minutes where they're trying to get back to their base or whatever. Which I think they put that in. I mean, I'm sure that was probably in the novel. Because the novel is autobiographical. William Wharton, actually, that's a pen name. His name is William something else, but he was in World War II. I don't think this actually happened to him, but it is kind of taken from aspects from him serving in the war. And when they leave and the Germans start attacking, that's apparently the start of the Battle of the Bulge, which is, of course, a famous battle. So I think they kind of wanted to include that, but I don't think it's necessary. I feel like they should have just ended it.
And the movie to me feels very like 90s, like the way the dialogue is, the way the characters are. It feels that way. And you said this about Glory, but this movie looks like a TV movie to me. It looks like it has zero production value, and it looks very flat. The colors are very like gray and neutral and not like dynamic or contrast, I guess, if you're talking about colors. So I don't think this movie kind of won me over, but I do you want to talk about that one climax scene, or do you want to?
Sure. Oh, because that was like your favorite. That was the one scene
that was the one scene that scene
worthy for you.
That scene was awesome. Oh, sorry. So I meant that. So basically, we're spoiling the movie. So what happens is that they finally get communicating with the German soldiers, and through Yiddish, they're able to understand that these German soldiers do want to, surrender themselves so they don't get sent off to Russia. But they feel like they have to show like they put up a fight. Otherwise, their families would be in danger. So they stage this kind of mock fight to do this. And the other thing is, like, I didn't really care for Gary Sinise's character. So they're staging this mock fight. They're all firing in the air. And then Gary Sinise, who's just kind of like out of it, like he just kind of has like, I guess it would be PTSD or something like that, shell shock, just isn't just out of it. He hears the gunfire, goes out there and thinks they're actually in a conflict and starts killing those German soldiers. And then the German soldiers are trying to save themselves and start firing back. And unfortunately, all the German soldiers die, and a few of the American soldiers get wounded or killed in that conflict. And that was thrilling, and that was terrifying, and like that did what movies do really well, and kind of like awoken and stirred all those emotions in me because I didn't think it was going to go wrong, and then when it went wrong, I was just like, oh man, this is so bad.
I think another thing about that whole scene and the whole setup, and another reason why it's so thrilling and tense, is that you don't know if the Germans are tricking them into something and they don't know that either, because they keep discussing it like, well, maybe they're luring us into a trap. I was expecting one of the German soldiers to be firing in the air and suddenly start firing at one of the soldiers.
See,
I wasn't sure if that was going to happen or not.
I
knew something bad was going to happen, but I thought it was going to be the Germans were like, we tricked you. And
I never for once thought that the Germans were lying the whole time. So that's interesting that we kind of came off of that differently. I would have staged that a little bit differently because like they fired all in the air. Like I would have had them move away from the shelter and fired at the shelter. So there's like bullet holes in it and stuff like that. You know, a little bit more convincing than like shell casings on the ground. But you know, hey, that's nitpicking at this point.
Well, I mean, Gary Sinise's character is weird, but I mean, I didn't mind his character. So at the beginning of the movie, it sets him up as kind of off his.
Yeah, he's out.
I mean, he's because he runs naked, or he strips as he's running, and he goes and jumps into a freezing cold like stream, basically. And it's snowy. It's very cold, so you don't want to do that, especially not naked. But his wife had a stillborn child that was born just a few days before that, and so he is just frustrated and angry that he's here in the war. He can't be home with his wife and everything. So he's just gone a little mad, but that ends up, of course, playing a big part, as you said, later on in the film when they are trying to surrender to the Germans, because they don't tell him about it. They do tell him that they met up with them at, sang Christmas carols at the one part, but they don't tell him what their plan is going to be, because they're going to let him take credit for it. Whenever the Germans surrender to them, they're going to say, oh, Gary Sinise's characters, they refer to him as mother. And Frank Whaley, they call father. So they've got a mother and a father. So they're a family in the chateau. It's almost like Rebel Without a Cause. But they're going to surrender to the Americans, and they're going to say it was all Mother's doing. And so Mother can get that combination. That way he can go home and see his wife, again, who just had a miscarriage.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's kind of a meta game that Ethan Hawke has with Gary Sinise, where he's trying to figure out ways that Gary Sinise can kind of get out of this situation and go back home and stuff like that, since it's affecting him so much. It's another one of those things where, it's not fair to the movie, but it's just like, if you took 5 minutes and had a real conversation with these people, shit wouldn't have gone the way it did. And then that's like that's really frustrating watching it, but that's kind of how conflicts happen in movies. So it just I do like, I mean, and going into this movie, I've heard that, I don't think it was this event, but you do hear like during Christmas, like there was kind of like a ceasefire on the lines, and the American side and the German side would get out and celebrate together. So like that's not unusual, and that's kind of a cool historic event. I think they talked about it in the was it either Space Above and Beyond or Battlestar Galactica TV series. I think it was Space Above and Beyond. They had an episode dedicated to that. So one of those two shows. So I think that's really cool, and I like that whole idea, and I'd like to see that explored a little bit more. But just for me, it just seems so like wishy-washy and uncertain at the beginning, because it was trying to make this all psychological that just didn't really work for me. And I'm with you at the end. It should have just been, Scrubs guy.
John C. McGinley.
John C. McGinley just kind of pulling the cord and all that kind of stuff.
And if he came in as in character as the character he played in Scrubs, that would have been really amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, I didn't mention, but so we watched the Beast of War not long ago. That music score was done by Mark Isham, and it is Isham. I found out the pronunciation. I think I did say Isham in that episode, but I wasn't sure if it was Isham or Isham. It's Mark Isham. But he does the score for this movie. I actually didn't really like some of the score for this movie. I like the score for The Beast. I like some of this music score, but some of it I felt sounded too contemporary to me. And I don't mind it if you use, because I like, for example, movies like Gallipoli, and that uses like some electronic music. I don't feel like it's out of place, even though it's anachronistic. It's intentionally anachronistic. This music is not intentionally anachronistic. It's just a soundtrack, right? But I felt like it sounded just a little too contemporary for me. But some of it's okay. But anyway, that didn't really take away from the movie. The things that took away from the movie were the flashback and the fact that it goes on much longer than it should. But I would recommend this movie. I think that it's good. I think it's a good kind of under the radar especially if you like war movies or whatever. But I think it's a good kind of under the radar movie to watch, maybe around Christmas time. Again, if you've made it this far, you heard the spoilers, so not exactly a feel good movie,
Yeah, for sure.
but still, I think it's an interesting movie that deserves to be seen. It's not without its problems.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah. So, what do the critics say?
88% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, 79% audience score. Roger Ebert. I didn't find a Siskel and Ebert review. I assume they did review it because it came out in '92, but I didn't find one. But I did see that Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars. Leonard Maltin really dug it. He gave it 3.5 stars.
Wow.
Yeah. He's
all
always
over the
like
place.
He's all over the place, and he's always, and I always say, oh, he gave it. I'm sure he has a team of people that wrote that book, so it may just be some guy that worked for him. But nevertheless, we got to attribute to Leonard because the book has his name in the title.
Yeah, it does.
It's your fault, Leonard. I don't care
fault.
if it's one of your cronies that wrote the review. It's your fault.
The buck stops with
the
you,
buck
Leonard.
stops with you, exactly. But yeah, he gave it 3.5 stars. So.
All right. Well, that's our review on A Midnight Clear. Anything else?
Mm-mm.
All right. So with our Wednesday episodes, we always like to follow it up with a viewer question. And, it's 2020 right now. We've been with the pandemic for quite some time, and it looks like it's not letting up anytime soon. With that in mind, are you excited to go back to movie theaters, or are you not looking forward to it? What are your thoughts?
So before COVID kind of reared its ugly head, you and I actually would go to the movies a lot because we'd go to the Draft House
once or twice a week.
Our favorite place to go and just watch anything and everything that came out. I honestly haven't missed going to the theater that much, but I think it's mainly because there just hasn't been, because of COVID, there hasn't been a lot that's come out since the theaters have been closed that I've just been dying to see. I'm not on board the Tenet train. I do want to see it, but I don't care about They
basically shuffled all the interesting movies off this year.
Right. So I haven't missed it really for that reason. When theaters do reopen, when it is perfectly safe to go back, of course I will go back, and probably with the same regularity that we went before. But I honestly haven't missed it just because, as you said, they've kind of shuffled everything to next year or beyond. The things that have come out, I either haven't really cared about or they've been available to stream in some form Of course, a lot of that stuff I haven't rented because I didn't feel like paying $20 or whatever it is for it. But some of the stuff they've kind of sloughed off, and it has been available without having to pay anything extra. So some of that stuff I've watched, but I'd say I'm kind of lukewarm about going back. Again, and also because I hate dealing with assholes at the theater that can't ruin it for everybody else, and there are still some of those people. Even when you go to places like the Draft House, there are still some people that refuse to put their phone up and refuse to stop talking and all that stuff, and you suck if that's you. And I always think about your story that you told about the guy that was taking selfies with his kids and drinking tequila shots and stuff. That was at Alabama Draft House. Yeah. Yep. So if you're that clueless, stay home for good. Sure. Stay home.
So I'm a little bit different than you. I do miss going to theaters. There's just something about it. It gets you. I think the hardest part is it's hard to kind of give yourself completely into the movies, at least for me, when I'm watching them at home. There's so much distractions. It's hard to, I guess I can get it perfectly dark and get the sound dialed in just right. But it's kind of difficult to do, I feel. So I feel like there is a level of, watching in a movie theater that just is not paralleled at home.
Yeah.
But that being said, I agree with you. They shuffled all the good movies off this year. Ever since Interstellar, ever since Interstellar came out, I am not hyped about seeing a Chris Nolan movie. Yeah. He just hasn't done any that really spoken to me. That was kind of the jumping the shark moment, in my opinion, for that. Movie came out in November 13th that I really wanted to see, Freaky. And I was very upset that movie was theater only. I wish it was theater and video on demand because I really, really want to see that movie. Same director as Happy Death Day, and it looks like a fun kind of horror movie, and I think it would be a lot of fun to watch. So I gotta wait for that. As of this taping, Wonder Woman 1984 is coming out both in theaters and on HBO Max simultaneously.
Saw that, yeah.
So I think that's a good way to do it. I hope theaters are still around whenever COVID's over. But again, we have probably 6 months until we can go to movies again, maybe even longer, because we have to make sure that there's antivirals out. There's what's the word? Cure, I guess is that the right word for it? A cure for COVID.
Not a cure, vaccine.
Yeah, a vaccine for COVID. That's probably the more accurate thing. And we got to make sure that gets out to the general population and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to take time, especially for people like us that aren't on the front lines and aren't doing that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a while. But I do want to go back because I do kind of miss that experience, even though we do have the occasional asshole that ruins it for us. But I still just kind of miss that experience. So I am looking forward to it, but I'm also being realistic and knowing that it's probably going to be fall of next year before we can actually go to the movie theater. And the Alamo Drafthouse might not be around anymore. They closed all the ones here in Dallas. So not permanently, but temporarily. So
yeah.
But I do want to go back to the theaters, and because I feel like watching at home is just not the same to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. It's not the same.
So that's our thoughts on it. If you have thoughts, how's your COVID viewing habits? Are you excited to go back to theaters? Let us know below in the comments if you're watching us YouTube, or send us an email, realshame@gmail.com. We also answer viewer questions, so if you have a question you want us to answer on air, go ahead and shoot that over to us. We would appreciate that. We post on social media at Real Shame on Instagram. Like, subscribe, share, do all that social media stuff because that really helps. And stay tuned next time as we cross yet another movie off our list of shame. We'll see you next time, guys. Bye.